Savvy Central Radio, drawing out the best from our guests with your host, Christina Nitchman.
Do you love horror, the strange and unusual, fantasy creatures or urban legends? Do you want to step inside a dream or nightmare? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then you should check out internationally exhibiting artist Jason Dowd and his award-winning photographic collections by visiting www.imaginationartstudios.com. Get inside his mind and experience his inner weird.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Savvy Central Radio. This is your host, Christina Nitchman. Each week, Savvy runs weekly broadcasts providing entrepreneurs and successful individuals a platform to express their dreams, hopes, lessons learned, expertise, and wisdom with the world. Our guest today is Tyrone Dubose. Tyrone has become known throughout the country as the master R&B historian that leaves many people baffled over his remembrance of chart history, and many have called upon his expertise to help solidify an important part of the heritage of soul music. If you like old school music, you'll love Tyrone Dubose's radio show called Timeless Traxx, a show that features a countdown of the top R&B songs in America over the past 6 decades, according to the charts. What makes his show unique is Tyrone shares with you the date and history of each song that he plays. Timeless Traxx plays in 28 stations and 3 countries. Find out more at timelesstraxx.com. Hi, Tyrone. Welcome to Savvy Central Radio. How are you this evening?
I am super excellent. Thank you. And thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate that you were able to come on down. You blessed us with doing a wonderful station call at the top of our shows now and also doing an ad for us. Thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you very much. I was honored to do so. And particularly us who are in the business, I think it's very, very important in being able to do that.
Yeah. So if anyone hears that luscious, glorious voice at the top of the show, that is indeed Tyrone Dubose here. And Tyrone, you have quite an impressive path that has led you to living your dream. Share with our audience a little bit about your journey and what led you to the career of radio broadcast, TV, and more specifically, a show dedicated to R&B.
Well, one of the things that in life, we always try to pick something that we think that's a passion that's going to make us become who we are and what we are today. And I always had a fascination for radio since I was a kid. And, listening to Casey Kasem in the mid-'70s, got me here. And I thought it'd be great to have an opportunity to do a show of his nature, a little history about the artist and telling the date the song enters the chart. And I thought that was a big deal. That's how I got started.
That's cool. I love Casey Kasem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. And also, I don't know about you, but I was also into watching Soul Train when I was a kid. And I was like, I want to get on that stage someday.
Oh, yeah. Everybody's in America was watching Saturday afternoons.
Yep.
And watching Soul Train, a very unique and groundbreaking program for all artists, actually, for anybody in music. It was great.
Yeah. And I liked your show in particular because it was not the same as I've heard other DJ shows where they kind of just act silly and announce the next song. And here we have blah, blah, blah. It was kind of really giving a deep history and incorporating R&B history into the show for the songs that you would display. So why did you take this unique path of hosting your show and really incorporating a lot of R&B history?
One of the things that I thought was extremely important when you do a show of this nature, I've learned that 5 million people can do a radio show. Mm-hmm. You can't tell people what makes you better. Mm-hmm. People always listen to you because there needs to be something different about you. And I thought that was important. So incorporating a little bit of my idol, Casey Kasem, and listening to him and a little detail about the artist and looking at the national charts, which I used to buy Billboard magazine every weekend and just see which song was number 1 in America before Casey Kasem came on the air. I was just that excited. And he was a storyteller, and I loved listening to listening to him tell stories.
Yeah. Not everyone has that talent. And it's interesting because I don't know about you, but I think sometimes we take some of our greatest talent for granted if it's something you just naturally do. And as you had told me earlier, Mom always said that you were really, really good at the gift of gab. And how did she put it?
I was either going to make a lot of money or get in a lot of trouble, and she was right on both counts. She was definitely right on that.
Yeah, and you're quite right. It's really oversaturated out there, especially since podcasting came into the arena. And a lot of people call me up and they say, "Hey, I want to start my own show, and I want it to be amazing, and I want to start monetizing the puppy." And I'm like, "Whoa! Well, for one, it does take work, and learning to listen to the guests. I've become a better listener. Learning to really find out who your audience is, what do they want to hear, all of that. And not everyone's cut out for it, for one. But along your journey to creating your show and finding your greatest passion, what has been some of your greatest hurdles or challenges along your journey, and how did you overcome them?
Well, I think ultimately, the thing that always kept me going was the faith of knowing that I really needed to find my niche of being something, somewhere, at some time in my life. I mean, this all just happened in a span of, 4 or 5 years where it's gotten, much bigger to the point to where I'm now, on the television show Unsung, where you talk about R&B artists. But some of the hurdles included me just wondering whether anyone was going to simply give me a chance, and recognizing that I heard more no's than I did yes. But all I needed was the one yes, and I just took off from there. I just wasn't going to be denied.
I think that's also a really big indication that you had a deep passion for it, and it wasn't something that was willy-nilly that, I might like to give this a go. It sounds nice. It was something that was deep in your heart that you were not going to accept a failure. You were going to keep going until you got there.
No, I was never, I was never going to allow myself to fail. And it was just never an option. There are times when I had to go, around the corner to get across the street. But ultimately, I was going to get here. It didn't matter.
Yeah. And another thing I'm really getting from what you just said is that it's not a clear path. I think often people think, okay, the most successful people we see in our lives, whatever company or person that is, even the stars we see, the celebrities, we think, one day they just woke up out of the crib and they were just amazingly famous. It took a lot of background work that we don't see that got them to where they are today. So that goes to say that there'll be a lot of failures sometimes until you reach your journey of success.
Well, one of the things that I always say, Christina, is plan your work and you work your plan. And there are 1,440 minutes in a day. So how many minutes do I want to dedicate to my dream today? And that, I think, always ultimately mattered to me and that mattered to the point to where I was going to do whatever it takes to make it happen.
Yeah.
And I was going to do it. It didn't matter what everyone else said, what everybody else did, but I think my biggest hurdle was recognizing that I was going to need to put in the time to make the only thing that mattered to me in my life happen. I think that was all that was going to matter to me.
And what have been some of the greatest key lessons you've learned along this journey to discovering and then living your dream?
Well, one of the key things in which I learned was just being resourceful, finding avenues of being able to find the music in which I learned. The other part was being able to find the niche of making yourself different than everybody else. I'm a big believer that being the same as everyone else generally won't get you much of anything. And significantly, people telling me that it couldn't be done or that I made the time to make it happen. People think your life is easy and you got it made doing this. But when you have a passion for something, it always begins with you not concerning yourself about how much money you're going to make. And people have to usually distinguish what's more important, the passion or the money. Money comes with expectation, but having it with a sense of a passion, that means you'll get an opportunity to perfect it. You can perfect your passion without making a lot of money.
Very good discernment. And what you mentioned at the start of that was that you were really trying to differentiate who you are that made you different from everyone else. And I can totally relate to that. When I first started this show, and it was really a marketing tool at first for my consulting business, I decided, well, if it's going to be successful, I'm going to copy the best in finances, because that was my consulting business. And that was Susie Orman. Yes. And I said, I'm going to be a Susie Orman show, and I'm going to take everyone's finance question. And my friend said, you are no Susie Orman, and it's more likely that people will call up and talk about their sex lives with you than they will about their money. So after hearing that from my friend, I said, what can I do that's me? And I said, well, right now I'm having trouble learning how to run my new business. Let me start there and have entrepreneurs share their wisdom and talents so that I can learn and they can learn. And that's how my original show, and I know other people have done an entrepreneurial type show, but my thing is just being me. Kind of just easy breezy, as my friends call it. When they listen in, it kind of sounds like we're sitting in a coffee shop talking business, but not with a business suit on.
I mean, it really ultimately, Christina, doesn't matter what it is. And most people generally won't get your passion better or bigger than you do, because it's ultimately not about what they think. It's really more about what you think. And they're not going to get it. The people who are going to get you are going to be the ones who stand by your decision of trying to make your passion your lifestyle.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, Tyrone, but when I got started, I really didn't have a clear focus until I started interviewing people and decided that it was going to be a business show. That's it. That's all I decided. But it wasn't until we continued to go along the way, and now we're 3 years in, that people started to describe to me what they saw the show to be. And I was like, well, yeah, that does make sense. So it's interesting. It kind of just evolved. I mean, did it work out that way for you, or did you just have a clear plan?
Well, no, one of the things, it's funny you mentioned that, one of the things that really changed my direction or my course was a gentleman here in Los Angeles who does LAradio.com. His name is Don Barrett, and he's very well known here in Los Angeles. And he saw me at a premiere of a radio station. And we'd been friends for a few years. And he asked me, he said, so Tyrone, what do you do? And I said, well, I do radio, I do television, I do voiceovers. And he stuck his hand out. And he's like in my face and he said, but what do you do? I was quiet because I didn't want to say the same thing because clearly that wasn't what he wanted to hear. And he then said, you know what? You don't know what you want. He said, but the next time someone asks you that question, you'd be better off having an answer. And I got to be honest with you. I mean, that was a big, big turning point in my life because I remember not being able to sleep for days after hearing that, because the truth is he was absolutely right. And I recognized that I was all over the place and I needed to find a definitive way of being able to specialize in something. And the truth is that before I did the R&B chart, I actually knew the pop charts because, that's what Casey Kasem did. So I knew the pop charts better. So I made the conscientious decision of making a choice, and I decided to go with the R&B charts because I thought that may be better. And to this day, that was the best choice I made.
And it's quite unique. I haven't heard anyone doing that. So you definitely have differentiated yourself. And I like that you mentioned, he said to you, you didn't know what you want. And there was a mentor I heard in a lecture a while back that said, I often ask people, the first thing I ask them when they're, in my audience is, so what do you want? I point out to someone. And they're like, well, I don't want too big of a house. And he's like, did I mention a house to you? I mentioned no house. I said, what do you want? And it's interesting that most people don't know how to answer that. The first thing they'll tell you is what they don't want, usually.
No, I totally agree. And I think that had been part of my biggest struggle. The truth is that I think I kind of knew what I wanted, but I think his comments got me focused. It reminded me of someone years ago who I worked with as a director, and he was a good friend of mine. And he had me on the set to do a few lines, and I couldn't get them right. And he didn't get upset with me, but he had the assistant director come into my trailer, gave me this paper that was about 8 feet by 10 feet. And it took me like 10 minutes to unfold it. But in small letters in the middle of that paper, it said focus. And from then on, I got it. And I think that, these teachable moments are the ones that get you to the next level of your passion and your dreams. You just got to decide whether it's worth it.
Wow. I love that you just mentioned that, because it's like you knew kind of in your heart where you wanted to go, but it was that moment where it just hit you, the aha moment that, okay, what's missing is focus from this equation.
Look, everyone has to have an aha moment in order to succeed. You're not going to succeed by just going along to get along. And that's one of the things I've learned. So I've recognized that I need to surround myself with people who really and truly want to see me make it work. And that's how I've gotten here.
So you brought to point here, just what I was going to ask you next, has there been anyone or any peoples or organizations that have really been an inspirational model for you on your path to success?
Look, I mean, the biggest mentor or the model that I had was Casey Kasem. But I think that we pick up mentors and people along the way. One of my dearest friends, has always been my dearest friend, is Ernest Thomas, who played Raj on What's Happening and Mr. Omar on Everybody Hates Chris. He's been a dear friend of mine for years. One of the things in which I've always admired and respected for him is the way in which he's treated people. And we learn a little bit about how to treat others by the people in which we're around. And that's helped me a great deal. Although my realm of work and things in which I do is different than what he does, we take a little bit from the people that we hang around with to see if we can in some way, shape, or form emulate those things in which we think are good for us.
Yeah, and that's a really good point because I've heard it said the 5 closest people you hang out with are who you most become because they reflect where you're going to go and where you're at.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah,
I agree. And I think that's what's gotten me here, learning the right things to say. The truth is that people believe that they have the right way or the right things to say and they know the right things. And the truth is I know that I don't. And so every day is a sense of learning experience for me to become a better person.
And through all of this, what would you say are some of your greatest achievements that just really stand out for you right now?
The show at this moment, the radio show is at this moment been based as one of the fastest growing R&B countdown shows in America right now. That's been something that's really great for me. But I knew I needed to do something else as well, which included the web series called Do You Know? And it's based on R&B trivia over the last 6 decades as well, where I ask a question and give the answer. But I think one of my highest achievements is being on the award-winning show from TV One called Unsung. And it's based on the autobiography of R&B performers in the past. And it's been one of probably my greatest highlights of my life. 17 million people getting an opportunity to watch you on TV, and it makes me feel pretty good.
Yeah, how did that work out for you? Was that really scary for you, being a whole new experience, or how did it work out?
The first one I did, I recall doing the very first one, and it was for a group called Midnight Star, and I knew them because we grew up together in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I saw myself on television there, and I didn't feel as though I was being Tyrone. I felt like I was being interviewed instead of being able to speak in a way or a manner that spoke in a sense of assertiveness. And I remember calling the executive producer of the show and thanking him for putting me on that particular time. But I recall saying, if you give me another chance, I promise you, I'll know what to do the next time. And he said my chance was coming and gave me an opportunity to do the singer CeCe Peniston. And so the first thing I did was I watched every Unsung television show that came on. And there was a gentleman who was on there as well. And his name Dr. Jeffrey Gardier. And I liked his mannerism. He was very, unassuming, but he was, he commanded a presence and he spoke with his hands. And I said, that's the guy I'm going to be on television. And it turned out to be probably the best move I made because I'm a big believer in planning your work and working your plan. It worked out well.
That is a really good tip there. And I recall we had someone on recently who had mentioned just to people who choose to go on like a TV, maybe news program just to promote their business or something. He said the first thing you want to do besides just jumping out there and talking about your product, service, or information is listen to a bunch of the shows and study up on it. How are other people answering? How are they asking the questions of you and all that stuff so that when you come there, you're completely prepared and not out of sorts and not looking like you don't belong there.
Yeah, you got to be inviting. If people see you stiff, then they figure that your product is stiff. That means that you're just a product man. People aren't usually buying your product. They're buying the personality. And if you've got a great personality, chances are you're going to sell that product.
Absolutely. They don't buy the product, service, or information. They buy the person. And also, I would also venture to say what they are getting, the emotion that they're getting from the product, service, or information, and they're buying that. Would you say as well?
Yeah, they are, because ultimately they're not buying they're buying your passion. Because when they see you passionate about the product, they believe they need to be passionate about it as well. You're selling yourself to that business. And I think that's important. It's what we all do, no matter who we are or what we've become in life. That's who we are. That's what we do.
What is your grand vision in the next year or so for your business and your career going forward?
Well, I had a conversation with somebody, an Oscar-winning performer, and I remember he was calling me. He was upset because he said he was trying to make himself relevant again. And I called saying to him, trying to be relevant is the very reason why you won't make it. You can't be relevant. You've got to find a sense to reinvent. And that's what, you're always relevant. All of us are relevant in some capacity. The key here is reinventing who you are in some capacity to make people believe in you and what you do again. One of the reasons why Madonna was so successful in her career, because she found a way to reinvent herself for the last 30 years. Same Madonna, different music, but, continually hit number one with it.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, she really, really hits on a really big lesson in the constant. And some people would look at her and they said to me, well, she's constantly being fake. She's changing who she is. I'm like, no, she isn't. She's just reinventing how she puts it out there. And you got to keep it fresh. You got to keep it new for people to stay interested in you, no matter what it is. If it's a product, or if you're a performer.
I mean, whether it's a product, performance, relationship, passion, whatever it is, ultimately, you've got to make yourself look as though you're deserving of someone giving you a chance. Nobody wants to eat in an empty restaurant. You don't want to look like you had one. So I think that matters.
Yeah. And for someone out there who's been around for a while and has kind of gotten stuck in a rut, how do they even begin to reinvent themselves? Because you don't want to be like everyone else. Well,
one of the things, it's interesting, my life has been based on teachable moments. And a gentleman who, heard my show told me that he had never heard his songs on my radio program. And I laughed and joked with him for a while, and he was really nice, but he gave me a CD, and what he wrote on the back of it was something that I think everybody needs to really get. He wrote to Tyrone, make sure you stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And I got to say, that really was a rallying cry for me, because it made me realize that the answer in my life and what I need to be is always yes. Do you have a website? Yes. Press kit? Yes. Sample of your show? Yes. References? Yes. Ultimately, the answer always has to be yes for the things in which you're trying to do for yourself. If the word is no in any way, shape, or form, chances are you're not going to do it. You just have to stay ready. You always have to stay ready, so you never have to get ready.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big deal for me. And another teachable moment that catapulted me to where I am today.
That's great. And someone had said to me recently, or I should say earlier today, that, hey, if someone says anything to you and it's a no, make it a yes. Go out there and make it happen. Whether it's you don't have your website ready, then you make it happen in like tomorrow or the next week. Like whatever it is, always make it a yes. And whatever you have to do, make it a yes.
Let me absolutely assure you, two things people are going to do when you give them a business card. They're either going to check out your website or they're going to Google you. And nobody's going to call you before they do that if you're in business. I don't care what you do or who you are. And the average person who spends a lot of time on a website is average about maybe 30 to 60 seconds. And your goal is to keep them there longer than that. If you got them there longer than that means you've got something that's worth talking about or looking at.
That's true. And if you don't have a searchable website, or you have a website where you're not even listed on any of the browsers, then that's something to start looking into, because if you're not out there, no one's going to trust you.
And then what happens is that if you are not out there, they're going to find 200 or 300 people who are, and then you'll get left by the wayside. Absolutely.
So where can folks find out more about you and listen to your awesome broadcast?
Look, for me, you can reach on my website, and it's www.timeless.com. I also have my YouTube is award-winning, the award-winning series called Do You Know, won the LA Web Fest for Outstanding Host, and Timeless Traxx, Do You Know, on YouTube. I can also be reached out live on Twitter and social media on Facebook at Timeless Traxx.
Fabulous. Well, I thank you again for coming out to Savvy and sharing your gifts and talents and all the lessons you've learned along your journey.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here.
Join our mailing list today by texting Savvy Radio to find out about upcoming guests and events and receive a free gift, how podcasting can help increase sales and influence in your business.
Savvy Central Radio is home to over 100,000 listeners per month globally and runs in syndication on 8 AM and FM platforms, including iHeartRadio and 6 podcasting platforms. To find out more about our paid sponsorship opportunities or to become a guest and find out how we can help you get your message out to the world, call 718 area code 713-2289 or email at savvycentralradio@gmail.com.